Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today for our 30 on Thursday webinar series, the last one of 2013. Today's topic is Nintex for Office 365. Just a little bit of introduction items before we get started. Our 30 on Thursday webinar series is a bi-weekly 30-minute SharePoint webinar series presented by Protiviti. Our next webinar will be Securing and Protecting Sensitive Information. It will take place on January 9th, 2014. You can register for this webinar and all of our upcoming webinars at sharepoint.protiviti.com/webinars. Today's session is being recorded. You can find today's recording at sharepoint.protiviti.com/archive-webinars, probably around this afternoon or tomorrow morning. You can find all of our past sessions there as well. Please insert all of your questions today in the question window in the GoToMeeting menu. We will save all the questions until the end. Today's session's topic is Nintex for Office 365. Today's presenter is Vadim Tabakman with Nintex, and I am Julia Oates with Protiviti, and I will be moderating today's session. So let's get started. I'm going to turn presenter rights over to Vadim.
Thanks, Julia. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. Hopefully you guys can all see it. A quick introduction. My name is Vadim Tabakman. I am the technical evangelist for Nintex for the Americas. I've been with Nintex for almost 8 years now, running from development to technical support to pre-sales and now the evangelist role. So, yeah, been around the block a few times now. I'll be showing you Nintex products for the Office 365. If you guys aren't aware of what Nintex is a global company. We've been creating workflow products and Forms products since the beginning of SharePoint. So we've had products for 2003, 2007, 10, 13, and now Office 365. We have 5 million licensed users at the moment and over 5,000 customers. And we are in 90 countries, or just a little over 90 countries at this stage. So what you're seeing right now is an Office 365 environment, just a regular site. If you have a cloud tenancy right now, you can actually do exactly what I'm doing right now. In order to add Nintex Workflow or Nintex Forms to your cloud tenancy, all you really need to do is click on that little gear at the top right, go to Add an App, and you'll see on the left you have your SharePoint store. I find the easiest thing to do is just simply go to the search thing and click on type in Nintex and press enter. You'll see the two products there. Otherwise, you'll actually find them in the workflow and process management group or category down here. When you click on either of these products, you'll have your Add It button that you can simply click on, agree to it. There'll be a pop-up window. Do you trust this app? You click on yes, and that's it. That's basic for both products. That's actually as simple as it gets when it comes to installing and configuring Nintex Workflow and Nintex Forms. What this means, though, is once you've done that, is if you go to any of your SharePoint lists or SharePoint libraries, you'll actually find 2 extra buttons on the ribbon. The first one that we'll talk about is Nintex Workflow that you'll see over here, the second one being Nintex Forms. What happens when you actually click on this button, and I'll click on that right now, is it's actually streaming the entire Workflow Designer from our cloud tenancy. That means that every time you click on that button, you'll always be running the latest version of Nintex Workflow. And I'll actually talk about this a little bit further to give you an idea of what that really means. You'll get this pop-up that will give you a 30-day free trial, which you can click on next and then go to the designer. If you have some experience with the on-premise versions of our products, it's a very similar look and feel. You have your actions on the left that you can simply drag and drop onto the design canvas, just like that. The number of actions you'll get out of the box on the left here will be about around 36 actions you'll see out of the box, so we're adding more and more to that. You'll also have this option to go into the Nintex store. Now, I'll click on that and I'll show you what that means. When you go to the Nintex store, you'll actually find there's a whole bunch of action packs. each one of these action packs has actions inside it. So if I was to click on the Bing action pack, you'll find there's actually 4 actions in here, getting directions, language detection, text-to-speech, and translation. Now, the reason I brought up the fact that when you click on Nintex Workflow, you'll always be running the latest version of the Workflow Designer, is that when we start adding more and more functionality to this, you will automatically inherit it. One great example is this Exchange Online action pack right here. This was actually added around 2 weeks ago, and all our customers who are using Nintex Workflow for Office 365 or our trial customers automatically just inherited this action pack. And if I click on that, you'll find that there's actually 5 that you'll see there. There's actually a second page with 4 more actions. So what you end up having is you end up having 36 actions just out of the box, the normal actions you'd expect to see in a Workflow Designer, plus around, it's about 80 or so actions in the store at the moment. So you end up getting about 110 to 120 actions that you can use out of the box. Now, in this particular example, if I was to just jump back to my list, what we're looking at right here is a leave request list. Just a really simple one where you put in the title for what you're planning on doing, the leave type, start date, end date, and that's about it. Now, if I jump to my Workflow Designer, I can click on Open, and I'm going to open an existing workflow and show you what it looks like. This is going to be a really simple leave request workflow, but it's something that you could start off with to start building out your workflow processes. What this workflow actually does is you'll see it'll actually send an email out to the person who created this leave request. So if I open this up, you'll find that all the configuration windows for Nintex Workflow Actions have a very similar look and feel. It's about around this same size. You'll see all the labels on the left and the fields you have to type in on the right. This one is sending it to the initiator. We're letting them know that your leave type is received. The bit that's in red is actually an inserted token that you'll find on the right. What that means is this workflow actually dynamically builds out this text. So if somebody puts in annual leave, then they'll get an email saying your annual leave request. Or if they put in sick leave, it'll have your sick leave request. And then you'll see in the body of the email that it was received. So that's a good notifier that you know that once you've submitted your leave request, that something is actually working on it or processing it. The next thing we're doing is we're assigning a task. This action is actually assigning a task that you see up here to the manager. So we're putting all the information they need into this task. You'll see in the task title and also the task description, there's everything the manager will need to respond to this particular task. We're telling who it is. So it might be, let's say in this example, we are logged in as myself. So let's say Vadim is requesting annual leave from a particular start date to end date. Please approve or reject this request. And we're actually down the bottom, I should mention that we have our task outcome. So depending on what the manager responds with, whether it's approved or rejected, we're going to do something with that. Then you have your conditional logic. So here we are, the task has been assigned, it's been approved or rejected. Let's say it's been approved. In this particular example, we're actually going through here, we're going to say yes, it's been approved, we're going to go down the right branch, and we're creating a list item. What we're doing here is we have a shared calendar in our Office 365 site that's going to be used for, let's say, my team. So I can see all the users, all my colleagues who are going to be going on leave in December. I'll be able to see all their leaves that have been approved in here. And then finally, I'm actually setting a notification again to the initiator, letting them know that their leave was approved. So that's a very simple and straightforward workflow. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to run it and show you what this looks like for the user experience. So let's say my leave request is going to be, I want to go to Las Vegas. Well, make sure it's an annual leave, not a sick leave. I don't think my boss would approve that one. And I'll pick those days for my leave. Now, in normal cases, the workflow will start automatically, but we can actually kick it off manually in this case, just to show you what's going on. So here's my workflow and my leave request. Clicking on that will actually start that workflow instance. If I go back to view the workflow history, it will take a few seconds and then you'll see a task will appear that's being assigned to this manager. Now in my environment, even though I'm logged in as myself, I've actually set it up that I'm also my own manager. So I prefer it that way. That way, you know, if I'm requesting leave, I can always approve it. So here's my task. I can click on that task. You know, in normal situation, I'll actually get an email. So if I jump to my inbox, I'll actually receive an email in here letting me know that a task has been assigned. You can see right there, you have a new task. So I can actually click on that link to follow it and approve or reject it. And now all I want to do is I want to edit this task. I have a button down here, approve or rejected. I'm going to approve it. This will take me back to my workflow history. I can see at the very top my internal status, it's still considered as started, so the workflow is still running. And when it's actually finished, you'll see it now says completed. Now what that means is that now the workflow is completed, we've gone through our entire process. If I look at my leave calendar, you can see this is empty at the moment. If I refresh it, I now see an item for those 4 days of leave that I requested. So now I have a shared calendar that I can share, you know, with my team, and they'll know exactly, you know, if they want to book me in for for a meeting request or something like that. You'll see that they can see my annual leave that I'm going to be out on that particular day. I'm going to jump back to my workflow. Oops, where are we there? And I'm going to show you how easy it is to actually extend this particular workflow. Now, you saw it was quite easy to actually drag and drop these actions onto the workflow. But what you can do on top of that is actually drag actions within the workflow around the workflow as well. So let's say instead of sending out an email, I actually want to do the task first. I can actually drag that around there. Or if I wanted to add an extra level of approval, I could copy this entire conditional branch. I could paste it into here, copy this task, again paste that above there. I may change this and say once the manager has approved, well I don't want another level of manager approval, but I do want someone in HR to actually approve it. So I might do HR approval. Now I go down here, I get rid of the superfluous actions that are down the bottom. Oops. And there you go. Now with just a few clicks of copying and pasting and slight reconfiguration of the assign a task action, we now have an extra level of approval in this workflow. That's as easy as it is. Very easy to build out the workflow logic that you want. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to the forms side of things. So again, the installation of forms is exactly the same. You go to the store and you click on it, add it, and it adds that little button on here. You notice that when I was viewing my approval form, it's just a stock standard out-of-the-box SharePoint or Office 365 SharePoint form. You know, a little boring, but you know, you can still do it. You can still use it. What you can do with Nintex forms is you can customize forms for lists. So if I go back to my leave approval tasks list, I go to the list, to the ribbon, and there's my Nintex forms button. I'll click on that, and what this is doing is it's actually interrogating the list that I'm on, figuring out all the fields that are visible, and building out a form for me. So I'd say like 75% of the work is actually, is already done for me, right? All the forms, let me close that. Now I can customize this any way I like. I can put logos on there. I can change the color scheme. Nintex Forms is a web-based product. So there's HTML, JavaScript, jQuery, all that behind the scenes. So if you have skills in doing that, or you have team members that can do that, they can really build out some very fancy looking forms. I'm happy with the form design that it built out of the box for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to publish this. That's as quick as that is, and I'm actually going to go back to my leave request list, and I'm going to restart this workflow so it creates another task for me. And going back to my leave request list, I'm going to refresh this until my task appears. So this is the old task that we're looking at right now. There's my task. Now if I click on that, doing a little bit of work, bringing up the form, and now you see we're looking at a Nintex form. I can click on edit, and again, now you have an edit version of the Nintex form that I can fill in and do what I need to do. I've got my outcomes here, I can approve it, and off it goes. So just with a few clicks, it actually built out my form for me, and off I go. I can continue on with the rest of my workflow and do what I need to do. So very easy, very, very simple to do. While we're looking at Nintex forms, I want to show you some of the other features that are available to you. Not only do you have the form that's built out for you, and like I said, you can customize it any way you like, you actually have different layouts you can do. So the default layout is a desktop layout, but you can actually add others like specific layouts for maybe your iPad or your Windows tablet or your Android tablet. And we'll be adding more and more functionality over here for more layouts, maybe specific to cell phones and things like that in the future. What you also have the ability to do is to put in some business logic into your form. You see you have the rules button over here, and that shows you the rules engine. You can start building out certain types of rules for this form. So maybe you could select some of these controls and say, if somebody, I'm going to add my new rule, and down here you can give it a particular name, and then you build out your condition. One of your conditions might be, depending on some certain scenario, I actually want to hide and show different parts of the form. So I'm going to pick item properties. I'm going to select, let's see, task outcome. And I'm going to say if task outcome is approved, then I'm going to hide the selected fields. So just as simple as that, you can build this sort of logic to actually make your form very dynamic. You can actually group a lot of these controls into a panel. So rather than putting rules maybe specifically on individual controls, what you do is you use this panel control. And panel is a way of grouping your controls. So you can see if I drag that control onto there, I can move the panel around. I can drag this other control to there. And by moving this panel, I'm actually moving the entire group of controls. And so again, I can start building a rule to hide, show, maybe change the formatting, maybe put some borders around this group of controls, just if a particular rule or condition evaluates as true. And you can see that when I go into the condition section of the rule, you've got some simple rules you can build out, like I did with the outcome. But you can build some very complex rules. There's a whole bunch of runtime functions where you can do things like, if, max, min, and, or, not. You can build a whole bunch of existing out-of-the-box runtime functions and use those around item properties or other properties of the form. Now, to get to a slightly lower level, if the rules engine is not enough for you, if you want to do something else, you could actually build out some custom JavaScript as well. So you can see you've got your custom CSS, which is what I was talking about. You can really customize the look and feel of it. There's already a bunch of CSS that comes with it, and you can either modify this or add your own. You also have your custom JavaScript. This is where you can add custom functions. So you might add some JavaScript that will run as soon as you open up the form or on a particular event. So you can actually add event handlers to certain controls on the form. Now if I look at specific controls, so this title control, it's a single line text box. You can see we actually have the option for validation. Now in validation, different controls will have different types of validation available to them. With a single line text box, it's a fairly flexible control. You can actually do range validation. So, if this is expected to be take some numbers, then you can actually specify what are the minimum and maximum values. You can also do regular expressions. So, for example, if you only wanted to have alphanumeric, all in lowercase, then you might say a simple regular expression like that, and therefore that's what the validation will look for. And then you can go down the next level, which is your custom validation. And like I mentioned, you can add JavaScript to your form design. This is where you specify a custom validation JavaScript function, and you can say title validation. And then that function will get called when you try to save that particular form. So very powerful, very flexible form designer that you can actually build some very complex functionality into. Now the other things you can do, I was going to jump to here we go, date control. So with all these other controls, you also have this sort of functionality to change the appearance. So you may want to highlight certain controls, so you can do things like borders. You can change the style, whether you want a solid border or maybe a groove, the pixels. And what happens is as soon as you click on save, it will automatically update it. One of the other cool things you can do with this is before you actually publish this form and make it live, you can preview it. So I can simply click on preview, let it know which device I'm doing it for, click on generate preview, and this is what the form will look like for users when they try to open it up. Now, one of the things that people do when they're building out forms is they're not necessarily going to build this particular form, I'm going to close this, in a production site. They may have like a UAT or a QA site that they're going to build their forms and make sure they all work and be happy with that. What you have is the ability to import and export your forms. So you export it, it basically saves as an XML file, and then you can take it to another site, take it to a list, open up the form designer, and you'll be able to import it there. So with that, I'm going to open it up to some questions regarding Nintex workflow, Nintex forms, just Nintex in general. So I'm happy to take any of your questions and make them as technical as you like.
Great. We do have a couple questions. I'll start with one. The question is, what happens to workflows that were created during the trial if they don't continue the trial?
So if that happens, then those workflows actually won't run once the trial expires. But if you uninstall Nintex workflow from your Office environment, then it will remove all those workflows as well. If, on the other hand, you actually go with an Nintex workflow subscription, then as soon as you provide us with the tenancy ID, then all those workflows will start working again.
Okay, sounds good. And we did have a question regarding the subscription.
Yeah, I can answer that. This is Galen. I'm the territory manager for Nintex. Vadim and I work together, and I've been on the call. So subscriptions for workflow for Office 365 are fairly simple and straightforward. It's based on users in your tenancy. The subscription list price starts at $250 a month, and that includes 100 users for free under that $250, and that would include workflow. It would be for forms, if you wanted to add that to your tenancy as well, that would be an additional $250 per month. Both of those would be paid annually up front, so roughly $3,000 for each per year for 100 users. Any user over that would be $2 per user, depending on your volume. As your volume increases, once you get to 250 users, 500, 1,000 users, that cost per user goes down, and it would depend on the size of that. We could actually give you a custom quote to make sure we have the numbers correctly. Also, you would receive discounts if you bundled workflow and forms together. You would receive discounts if you had multi-year contracts. So that's how we work pricing for that, and there are no other additional costs. Those costs include all support, updates, and full access to the product.
Thanks, Galen. We do have an additional question. What happens to in-flight workflow instances when the workflow is modified, for example, adding or removing steps?
Gotcha. Great question. So when you build a workflow, it actually gets a version number. So when you save a workflow, it gets a minor version. So you'll see something like version 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. When you publish your workflow, it actually gets a major version, and that you can actually run. So they'll get versions like 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. When you have existing running workflow instances, they started with a particular version of the workflow. If you make any changes to the workflow design and publish it again, so it gets a new version number or a new major version, those running workflow instances will actually continue running with the version of the workflow that they started with. Any new workflow instances will actually kick off with the new version. So everything will be protected. If on the other hand you actually need the old workflow instances to run with the new version or new design of the workflow, you'll need to terminate those instances and start them again manually.
Great, thank you. And we did have a question about where people can view this video again. The recording will be posted on our archived webinars page at sharepoint.protiviti.com/archived webinars. And you can find this recording there probably tomorrow morning. It'll be up. So.
Yep. And I just wanted to add that you can actually find some more information about the Nintex workflow and Nintex forms for Office 365 on the Nintex site. There's a whole bunch of information about all our products there, and then you'll be able to find more information on a site that we have called Nintex Connect. And this is like our customer collaboration portal, so you'll find our forums, documents, tutorials, and things like that on this site as well. So great resource to have if if you get the trial and you want to learn some more. You can either have a look there. You can talk to our partners, Protiviti, and get a lot of information from them as well.
Great, thank you. We're having a couple more questions come in. One question is Nintex Forms Wcag and Section 508 compliant?
So Section 508 would require, so what happens is that our product lives inside SharePoint, so we would follow the same rules of what Section 508 would require for disabled folks. So because it lives inside SharePoint, it would make those requirements. I can get some information over to Protiviti on that if they'd like to see it. So we do have some documentation on that.
Okay, great. Vadim, if you could make me presenter really fast, I'll put our contact information back up.
No problem. There you go.
Okay. Here is my email address as well as Vadim's email address if you all would like to contact us after the webinar. Again, you can find our upcoming webinars at sharepoint.protiviti.com/webinars as well as our archived sessions, and you will be able to see today's session tomorrow morning. So thank you and have a great day.